Can't hear you, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yes, now yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimbrandhasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gatavam Mahindat Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Divam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati De Gaurvani Pracharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschyata Desatarane Vancha Kalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Chaptitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpati Gopesa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We are continuing in Śrīla Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta, Volume 2, Chapter 40. Hridayananda Goswami. Prabhupada was taking his massage sitting on a straw mat outside his cabin. Suddenly, two little kittens appeared by his mat and they were rolling around, tumbling. They were wrestling, tumbling, rolling around and round. Immediately I thought, oh, they are contaminated. I have to get them away. The cats actually tumbled right onto Prabhupada's mat. They rolled in a little furry ball right over to Prabhupada's feet. Prabhupada began tickling them under their chins. He was laughing, rubbing under their chins. Then he turned to me, sort of in a very jolly mood, and said, Jesse, even here there is love. Shrutakirti, I was in charge of the kitchen, so I was too busy to see Prabhupada at all. He was there for a week, and practically the whole time I didn't get to see him. I was so upset. I was doing all this service and I had no opportunity to see Prabhupada, always cooking until midnight. I felt so bad. So the day before Prabhupada left, Kirtananda Maharaj came up to me and said, So you are going to be Prabhupada's servant? I said, Oh no, this is wonderful. No, this is terrible. I was so worried. Then he said, You will be leaving tomorrow morning to go to Pittsburgh. I thought, wow, that was quick. I didn't know anything about it. The following morning, Kirtanananda Maharaj brought me over to the farmhouse Prabhupada was staying at. He took me into Prabhupada's room and said, This is Shrutakirti. He is going to be your servant. Prabhupada looked and I paid my obeisances. Kirtananda Maharaj said, He cooks very well, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, That's very good. But he hasn't massaged. Maharaj said, I had never done it before in my life. And then Prabhupada said, That's all right. Anybody can massage. It is very easy. Satyanarayana. I was with a group of devotees. We would travel around the country in an old bus preaching. On the bus, he had deities, a kitchen, and a shower. Prabhupada was outside of his cabin when we drove up in the bus. When he came on, we received him just as in a regular temple and gave him charanamrita. He looked at everything and said that there should be hundreds of buses like this. It wasn't such a big event for him, but he really liked it. Satsvarupadas Goswami. I saw different leading devotees go down to that house to see Srila Prabhupada on important business. I have no important business that hadn't been answered by him in letters, but I began to feel anxious that I was not going to him while others were. Finally, one day my anxiety grew so great that I decided I would go and see his divine grace. When I arrived at the door of the house, Prabhupada's servant gladly let me in, and in a moment I was seated before Srila Prabhupada. He was seated to take his massage. I expressed to Srila Prabhupada that I had no very urgent questions to ask him in particular, but that I had become anxious to see him, and so I had come. Prabhupada replied that I should know better than to come to him out of such anxiety. He said he had already answered everything in his books. Actually, this was very inspiring. On the other hand, he was telling me that as an older devotee, I should be assured that by studying his books, everything was there. Not that out of anxiety, I should feel lacking and on an impulse have to personally see my Guru. But now, since I was in his presence, Srila Prabhupada asked me, "What are you doing?" When Srila Prabhupada said, I got the a strong impression that he was regarding me in the proper place as a tiny fool. Here I had just been initiated sannyas, and I was coming before Prabhupada with my assistant, and asking for his attention. Now that I had asked for his attention, he gave me a surveillance glance, and by his question, he seemed to imply that I am doing nothing or very, very little to spread Krishna consciousness. That was how I interpreted his question. What are you doing? I replied that I was, according to the instruction that I have received from him in a letter, going from temple to temple in my zone and implementing his desire that the students there study the Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning class. I had previously felt very confident that I was exactly following direct orders I had been given in a letter from him. But to my surprise, in that room in New Vrindavan, he began to tell me that visiting temples was not the most important thing. He said that he was pleased with the program of Vishnu Jan Maharaj, who was traveling on a bus. He said I should do like that. I immediately replied, then your instruction that I should go to the different temples is not very important. I should take a bus. And Srila Prabhupada became annoyed and said, it is not that because one thing is more important, the other thing is less important. Everything is important. Not that just because I say this is important to travel in a bus. Now you say traveling to temples is not important. Krishna's head is important and Krishna's foot is also is important. Everything about him is important. While while Prabhupada participated fully, both formally and informally at New Vrindavan, he still carried a special burden of concern for Bombay. Although he had appointed GBC secretaries to oversee the Krishna consciousness movement in various parts of the world, he was the real GBC secretary of India. Wherever he traveled, therefore he remained partial to those projects. He was setting the perfect example of a GBC secretary. While conscientiously tending to practical affairs, he remained always transcendental, fully dependent on Krishna and always preaching. After drafting a telegram to Giriraj or hearing of difficulties in Bombay, he would immediately return to his peaceful routine and active preaching. He would take his late morning massage bath, put on tilak methodically and delicately, say his Gayatri mantra with silent composure, take his prasadam, rest for an hour, and in the evening, after a full day's activities, go into temple room of whatever temple he happened to be in, sit on the Vyasasana and chant Jai Radha Madhav and speak pure Krishna consciousness. September 8th. After New Brindavan, Prabhupada went to Pittsburgh, where he attended a successful engagement at a large hall, the Syria Mosque. He also met with a Catholic bishop, whom he asked, why do the Christians kill cows in slaughterhouses and thus break the commandment, thou shalt not kill? Prabhupada had often asked this question of Christian priests and was always unsatisfied with the answer. This was no exception. In an informal gathering in his room, Prabhupada stressed outgoing preaching programs and he advised his newly initiated sannyasis present to follow the example of their god brother Vishnu Janaswamy, to travel in a bus from town to town and hold festivals and distribute books and magazines. September 9, the devotees in Dallas had purchased a large church facility and were forming the first ISKCON children's school known as Gurukula. Prabhupada, while traveling in India during 1971 and 72, had sent a series of letters to Dallas teachers explaining the basic direction he wanted them to take for becoming a Krishna conscious primary school. We will teach the basic requirements of reading and writing, but also give them real spiritual knowledge, how to live perfectly. What other school of learning offers such a wonderful educational opportunity? Last night, the topic of my lecture at our Delhi Pandal was the necessity for teaching Krishna consciousness in all our schools and colleges. This is a revolutionary thought, but we have seen that the practical outcome of so much godless education in technology and science is that they are producing only hippies. one after another. What is the use of the skyscraper buildings if their sons will not maintain them? The old system of Gurukul should be revived as perfect example of a system designed to produce great men, sober and responsible leaders who know what is real welfare of citizens. Just as in former days, all big personalities were trained in this way. Now you have got the responsibility to inject this idea in your country. Please do it with a cool head, and very soon we shall see the practical benefit for your countrymen. These letters had assured the Dallas devotees that they were doing the most important work for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. The school had gained support from other ISKCON members, and many parents had sent their children. By the time of Srila Prabhupada's visit, about 50 students were enrolled. Prabhupada said Dallas weather reminded him of Calcutta, even though he felt uncomfortably hot. Disdaining the use of air conditioning, he shed his kurta and sat on the lawn with his inexperienced but eager group of teachers. The best system of education, he said, was as he had known as a child. One teacher in a room with up to 50 students of various ages and aptitudes. One at a time, the students would come to the teacher's desk, receive guidance and a further assignment, and then return to work. The Gurukul teachers were particularly concerned and puzzled about how to discipline children without being punitive, and Prabhupada unhesitatingly solved all their puzzles. He said the students should both fear and love their teachers. The teacher, by stern countenance, may threaten an unruly child and make him submit, but the teacher should not hit the child. The next day, Srila Prabhupada went into a classroom and sat on a cushion before the class. Holding a blackboard pointer in each hand, he joked that one stick could be used for hitting the student's head and the others for hitting their hands. The children and teachers became delighted to see Prabhupada's playful mood, and when he asked if anyone wanted to be hit, both teachers and students moved forward, holding their hands out of for a merciful slap from Srila Prabhupada. To demonstrate how to teach, Srila Prabhupada called for a volunteer. Dwarakadisha came forward. Prabhupada, placing his venerable hand over the boy's, guided him repeatedly in forming the first letter of Sanskrit alphabet. News of Bombay followed Prabhupada to Dallas. A devotee who had recently come to the West from Bombay informed Prabhupada of Giriraj's recent talk of resigning as president of the center. Depressed by his ineffectiveness in dealing with Mr. N, the lawyer, the government, and harassed by bickering and uncooperative devotees, he was considering himself unworthy to keep the charge. Now, Giriraj's anxiety became Prabhupada's as again he concerned himself with all the affairs of his Juhu project. There seemed to be no one he could discuss this with, since the devotees in America knew almost nothing of matters in Bombay. The night was too hot for sleeping, and Prabhupada could not concentrate on translating Srimad Bhagavatam. So he stayed up late talking with his secretary about Bombay, surmising the mind and mood of Mr. N and expressing his concern of his Krishna conscious land and his wonder at the devotee's hesitation and disheartenment. He turned the argument this way and that, considering it in different lights, until the early morning he finally put it aside. Afterward, he composed again another telegram. Settle land immediately at best price possible and promised to pay it if he won't. We can pay, suggest 15,000. Don't change presidency until I come. Large marble deities of Radha and Krishna arrived in Dallas by trailing from New York. Prabhupada had specifically selected these deities for Dallas Gurukul while in India and ordered them to be shipped to the United States. The Krishna deity was magnificent. He was tall, bigger than most ISKCON deities, and his limbs and hand were strikingly large. According to one story, the deity was several hundred years old and therefore carved according to an ancient tradition. Even though the devotees in Dallas were unprepared to install Radha Krishna deities, Prabhupada told them to get ready in 2 days for the installation, which he would personally perform. Janav Devidasi, however, unauthorizedly removed the original paint from the deity and began to repaint them. When Prabhupada heard this, he became furious. He called the Dallas president Satsvarupa Das Goswami, to his room and demanded an explanation. Satsvarup said that he was a fool, but that Janava had also acted without his permission. Prabhupada then called for Janava and yelled at her furiously. She began to cry. Why have you done this? Srila Prabhupada demanded. Nonsense, was her choked reply. Nonsense, Srila Prabhupada affirmed. Suicidal nonsense. You are a nonsense and you will always remain a nonsense. So what are you doing to do about this? Well, Srila Prabhupada Janav replied weakly. I called up Bharat, Bharat Raja in Los Angeles and he said if I use a certain kind of paint, Bharadraj, Prabhupada yelled, who is this Bhadraj? I am your spiritual master and I am sitting before you. Why do you not ask me? Disgusted, he then turned to others in the room. So, what is to be done about this? One of the ladies said that with a quick drying paint, they could repaint the deities just as before in time for the installation. Yes, Srila Prabhupada said, do it immediately. Janav stayed all up night, carefully repainting the deity as before. Early the next morning, which was to be the morning of the deity installation, Krishna looked very beautiful, although his body was tacky in spots from the fresh paint. During that morning's walk around White Rock Lake, while talking philosophically about various topics, Prabhupada turned casually to Satsvarupa Maharaj and asked about the preparations for the installation. When Satswarup said he was uncertain whether Krishna's paint would be dry enough, Prabhupada suddenly stopped. If the deities weren't ready, he said, there was no use in his staying any longer in Dallas. Turning to his secretary, he told him to change their flight reservation as soon as possible. Satswarup begged forgiveness and said that maybe everything could still be done on schedule. Prabhupada's angry mood changed and he continued talking about other matters. Later in his room, Prabhupada talked alone to Satsvarupa, continuing on the point of his morning lecture about materialistic life. In a casual way, as most people would talk about ordinary things, Prabhupada spoke of foolishness of conditioned souls. They think that just by having a big family and being absorbed in mundane activities, they do not have to concern themselves with death or with the next life. As Prabhupada spoke, he shook his head in disbelief, considering the incredible position of the materialist. All of Prabhupada's disciples noted the same amazing thing about him. Wherever he went, his consciousness was always in transcendence. Whether staying up late, worrying and talking about Bombay, or criticizing devotees for repainting the deity, his mind was ever moving from one Krishna conscious concentration to another. The devotees with him would sometimes observe his awesome Krishna consciousness from a respectful distance. At other times, they might, in name of service, speak up and become more personally involved, or they might find themselves thrust under the direct scrutiny of his demanding attention. No one could presume or accurately predict in what way Prabhupada would act in his constant grave service to his spiritual master. While sitting with Saswarupa Maharaj, Prabhupada began humming and singing a Sanskrit phrase from the morning's Bhagavatam class, Griheshu Griha Medhinam. Then he asked, so what is the deity? So how is the deity? Satsvarupa said he thought he was dry. Prabhupada stood and walked into the room where Janava was examining the repainted deity. Calmly he stood before Radha and Krishna singing to him. Yes, he said, now it's all right. Later that morning in the temple room, Prabhupada sat on his Vyasasana and installed Radha and Krishna, reciting the praise from Brahma Samhita. He then offered the first arati to the deities who had been hastily dressed and placed on an almost bare altar. Prabhupada seemed pleased, however, and later went up to his room and wrote a piece of paper, Radha Kalachandji, the deity of Dallas, September 12, 1972. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Kala Chandaji, he said, means black moon. Prabhupada was preparing to return soon to India via western route, and he paid another visit to his Western World headquarters in Los Angeles. On the very day he arrived, however, he wrote more directions to the devotees in Bombay, reassuring them the Juhu land was not just a trouble spot but a special place where a great plan would be carried out. It was worth fighting for. Now I am anxious to hear if the conveyance deed has been signed and what are the contents. Kindly send me the copy duly signed as quickly as possible. This will give me great relief. As soon as the conveyance has been signed, you may begin the building work immediately. I am coming to India soon, at least by October, and I want to see that building projects in Bombay, Mayapur, and Vrindavan are going on nicely. This Bombay project is one of our most important projects in the whole world, and I am looking at you and others there in Bombay to see that it is done very magnificently. Prabhupada's secretary had recently shown him a new advertisement booklet printed by Air India in which the art theme was exclusively dedicated to Krishna in Vrindavan. Prabhupada was encouraged to see that Air India was enticing tourists to come to India to experience Krishna culture. This confirmed his idea that in the future, Hare Krishna land and his other Indian projects would be important showpieces for tourists wanting to experience real Vedic culture. Mail from Bombay always received first priority, and every morning Prabhupada would ask for news from Bombay, giving any letter from Giriraj immediate attention. Early in October, he received a long letter from Giriraj. We just cannot control the material nature, and although everything is going on slow, Mrs. Morarji, Mr. Munim, the bank, and Mr. N all feel that they are proceeding as quickly as possible, and they do not respond very favorably to being overminded by me of the urgency of the matter and of your anxiety that it to be finished. Nothing new had developed. The deed still had not been signed. Although Giriraj said he now had no intentions of resigning his post, Prabhupada, after studying the letter, concluded that other senior devotees in India should also help. He therefore wrote to Tamal Krishna Goswami and Bhavananda, both in Vrindavan, asking them to go immediately to Bombay and try to expedite the conveyance. Prabhupada was asking Tamal Krishna to revive his active status as a manager in India. Giriraj is finding difficulty from his letter, I can understand. So I think you have to revive your position as GBC again and look after all the business of India affairs nicely. Prabhupada also wrote Giriraj informing him that other devotees were coming to help and reminding him to also work with the board of trustees. I cannot tax my brain so much from such distant places as to what to do if there were any difficulties. Therefore, I am relying completely on you, my trusted senior disciples, to finish up these things nicely. Prabhupada repeatedly instructed the managers in Bombay not to deviate from the terms of the purchase agreement. He was willing, as a matter of concession, to pay 5 lakhs to be deducted from the total price, but no more changes. The devotees should press Mr. N to the original agreement. Prabhupada was worried that he had not heard from his lawyer, Mr. D. 2 weeks before. He had telegrammed both Mr. N and Mr. D asking for reports on the delays, but he had received no replies from either of them. He had since written to another lawyer, a friend in Bombay, asking about the delay, and in Los Angeles he received the reply. Mr. D was no longer his attorney. A couple of days after receiving this shocking news, Prabhupada received a formal letter from the office of Mr. D informing him of the same. Of all the recent news from Bombay, this was the most disturbing. Prabhupada began to see how Mr. N had been devising a devious plot from the beginning. It was not just a matter of slowness or bureaucratic delay. Mr. D had been in league with Mr. N. They were cheaters. So now it was going to be a real fight. ISKCON would have to go to court and file criminal charges against Mr. N. There was no avoiding the fight, but Prabhupada still felt that his position was legally very strong. Before leaving Los Angeles, Prabhupada thought of a further tactic. He wrote to Giriraj that he should put a notice in the newspapers advising the public that ISKCON had signed an agreement for purchasing Mr. N's land at Juhu. He then traveled to Berkeley. October 6, during his brief visit to Berkeley, Prabhupada met with a group of professors from the University of California and asked and also installed Radha Krishna deities in Berkeley temple. But still he was meditating on Bombay. He wrote to Tamala Krishna Goswami, the Bombay dealing has been muddled by the tactics of Mr. N and Mr. D, Giriraj is in trouble. He is a child in these worldly dealings, so immediately go to help him. But you must be careful to pay the money in the court register office and not in the hand of Mr. N or his solicitor. Settle up the things properly, otherwise, let us go to the court for specific action, either civic or criminal, against the tactics of Mr. N. Prabhupada decided to send Karandhara, whom he considered expert, to help in Bombay. He also wanted to see Shyamasundara, but Shyamasundara had gone to London regarding a large country estate George Harrison was donating. Prabhupada notified Shyamasundar, however, that once the London transaction was completed, he should go to Bombay. Prabhupada was ready for the fight. He would not be cheated. During his return trip to India, Prabhupada again visited Hawaii. Then, on October 11, he went for the first time to Manila, where a small number of disciples had arranged preaching programs for him, both in the temple and at the Hotel Intercontinental. In Manila, Prabhupada carefully considered his position regarding Jute property and concluded that he would come out victorious. He listed points of his arguments in a letter to Giriraj. We have fulfilled all the conditions as purchaser. Mr. N has purposefully delayed in a motive to cheat us, as he had done in with some others in this connection. But this time he cannot cheat us because we are in possession of the land and our deity Radha Krishna is installed there. Therefore, we must immediately go to the court for enforcing him to execute the conveyance immediately. Even if the court cases doesn't, even if court cases case goes on for a long time, still our business there cannot be stopped. Without going to the court, we cannot make any compromise with him. But but I think we can arrange the full amount of 14 lakh to get out this rascal out of the scene. But we cannot do it without going to court, otherwise we shall become a party for breaking the purchase agreement. Therefore, we have to go to court before making any compromise. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thanks for joining and very patiently hearing what's been happening 1969, 70, 71, 72. Yeah. When I was reading this, I was seeing the connection. If you may have seen, there is a book, the biography of Shrutakirti Prabhu. I don't know if you have written. There is also this, yeah, as who's this Maharaj? Forgot his name. One second. Famous Kirtanananda Maharaj, I think. Is it Kirtanananda Maharaj? Yeah, yeah. So Kirtanananda Maharaj. He said Shrutakirti Prabhu that you will become the secretary, and he was surprised. And then this whole diary is telling how he's been touched by Prabhupada in his service as a personal secretary for a good number of years, traveling with him everywhere. There is this funny incident I remember was Prabhupada once asked, bring French fries. Is it French fries? And Shrutakirti Prabhu prepared it and then brought, and he was saying, "What is this?" Um, so actually, in the United States, French fries means chips, right? Chips. So I think he brought chips instead of French fries. So something or the other. So and later Prabhupada said, "Okay, bring that. I'll eat." So anyway, coming back to what Prabhupada was going through during these years and installing deities with full speed and teaching every moment reminds me that a guru should be very strict. Mm, there are two sides, but when it comes to gurukul and when it comes to student and teacher, uh, Prabhupada was showing it's not that he is not having love for his devotee disciples. Out of his love only, he was kind of very strict and very strong, speaking very Hmm. Yeah. Unbearable. When it comes to nonsense. That he was chastising Janav Mataji for her painting service. All these things. But still, they had complete faith in Prabhupada. It's not that they were saying, "Hey, who is he to tell us? What right he has? If he is a guru, then does it mean that he can do anything?" So no, nothing like that. They have complete surrender. Then they admit themselves. They are very very um, um, civilized in terms of transcendental uh, devotional service, or uncivilized in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada, his responsibility and duty as a guru, he was very strict. Yes. Anything else? Anyone want to share?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. It was nice to hear. Sri Prabhupada. I was traveling intensively and also managing from far, uh, yeah, supporting his Mumbai project. Probably, Prabhuji, that was the biggest project at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Mayapur is also another big project. Yeah, that also we'll be discussing. But definitely Bombay. Yeah, because it was not easy. Mm. So if we know that there is someone is a mafia, then we already know how careful we should be, right? In this case, this guy, Mr. N, right? He was mm, hiding. He was delaying. He was having another intention. Yeah, and Prabhupada was, yeah. So we see that there are two things that happen. Prabhupada was not saying, "Oh, now I have to immediately go," and he didn't stop everything, right? He didn't stop because Bombay is burning, and then he has to jump and then cease fire there and settle things. No, he was also mm, installing very important temples in the West, preaching, teaching, in establishing centers. Uh, uh, yeah, he knew it's not going to be easy. Yeah, when he left from Bombay, he went to Japan and other countries. He knew that that's the reason he was always having this in the background or even foreground sometimes, thinking what should be done, not sleeping nights. Yeah, and yeah, thinking about it, but also confident that yeah. Um, he was confident not just because Krishna will take care of it. He was confident that he's also seeing that all the points from us are. He was also expert in scrutinizing what is our position. He was checking time to time. Will we win it? Will we not? Um, so that gave him confidence, comfort that he could still go on with his preaching in the West.
He was saying also we read that the other so the US devotees may not have a clue about this problem, how
Yeah,
difficulties, and Srila Prabhupada was he was managing, going different places, giving lectures, and at the same time he was actively managing whom to send and what to do, and
yeah,
it's nice
yeah.
to learn.
Yeah, it was definitely not easy, right? So we know if people, we know very well, like how Bombay, especially business people, deal. Uh, no sentiments, only business, and very shrewd, very tactical, uh, and experts. And yeah, so just imagine Prabhupada, how he is handling such situation. Yeah, it's not like, oh, he has a whole backup of ministers and government authorities, or no, he was fully ready for the fight, which we will read next week. Yeah. Gaur Bhavan. Anyone else? Makarand Prabhu, I think is it first time you're hearing?
Yes, Prabhu. This is my first time. Yeah, I really inspire with these things because this is the first time, and I'm joined late actually. But yeah, I understand what background is going on and how difficult to be. We are talking about the Jew who is Cont temple, am I right? So
Right.
it's the mostly I'm living in Mumbai, so I visited multiple times over there before during college days also, and of course after job also, during my job also. So yeah, and now I know how. I wanted to know about how this
goes forward.
goes, and yeah, so I know those time which you told about, that 1969 and 19 until 1980. That's really hard to be in Bombay because that is most of the mafias are active until 1990, until 1995. But yeah, there are lots of things. Yeah, and now I understand how difficult to manage these things and how Prabhu doing that. So really inspire me also to join the next class. Yeah, to wanted to know about the next chapter.
Yeah.
Dhanyavad.
Everyone are looking forward over the next week. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for joining. And if no one want to share further, then let's close here. Thank you so much for coming, and let's meet tomorrow in Bhagavatam at 7:30 morning. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Shri Sadguru Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji.